So these are the new Oakley Meta Vanguards, and this is a pretty interesting piece of tech where these take everything from the Oakley Meta Houston AI glasses and put some upgrades in them that make them more capable for sports, where these have a wraparound lens design with a more secure fit, there's increased water resistance, there's louder speakers as well as better microphones, they've centered the 3K camera with a wider field of view, and there's also Garmin and Strava integration. So I think AI glasses have been out long enough now that they've matured beyond just something for the techiest of the techivists. So I've been specifically intrigued by them for the camera aspects as just more of a convenient way of capturing content for my social media, but also capturing footage for all the watch and bike reviews I do on this channel. And I've been using the Oakley Meta Houstons for a bit now, and they've been good, but not necessarily great. But these Vanguards solve a lot of the things about the Houstons, which have kind of held me back from using them as much as I would like to. But along with that, there's also Garmin and Strava integration, which makes this a lot more interesting, not only for me, but probably for all of you out there who own Garmin devices who also upload their activities to Strava. So in this video, this is going to be a first look video where we're going to check out what's inside the box. We're going to take a really up close look at them. We're going to talk about some of the specs and how they differ from the Houstons. And I've also got some sample footage to show you, and we'll also talk about the Garmin and Strava integration and how that works. And then in about a week or so, I'll have a full in-depth review with tons of footage as well as comparison shots. So make sure to subscribe to the channel to get a notification when that video comes out. Oh, and then I'll also be using these over on my Instagram as well. So if you want to get a sneak peek at more footage before the in-depth review, head on over there too. All right, so first up, let's talk about the options that you have with these. So these come in 4 different lens and frame options, where they have a black frame with a gold colored lens, which they call a Prism 24K, and then red lenses, which they call a Prism Road. And then they also have a white frame option with black or sapphire prism lenses, and all of them run $499. And the lenses are also replaceable, so you can swap these out with different lenses if you like based on your conditions. And they'll also have a low light lens option coming soon, and all the additional lenses are going to run $85. One thing to note though about the lenses on the Vanguards versus the Meta Houstons is that there's no prescription option on the Vanguards. However, you can put prescription lenses into the Houstons. And then for price, so these run $499 in the US, so basically $100 more than the starting price of the Houstons. So let's talk about what you get for that extra $100. So when it comes to what you get inside the box, so the unboxing experience is pretty similar to the Houstons, where you'll open up the box kind of like a Christmas present, and then inside you'll find the case with the Vanguards inside. There's some additional nose pad sizes. There's also a nice polishing cloth and bag, and there's also manuals and a quick start guide. And then inside the case, we've got the Vanguards themselves, and then you'll need to pull this little plastic tab to wake them up so you can pair them. So for the Vanguards themselves, so the ones I have for here today are going to be the black frames with the Rode Prism lenses, and they have a wraparound design not only for the lenses, but the entire frames themselves. So they should be a little bit more secure than the Houstons. And they also come with a few different size nose pads for both a high bridge as well as a low bridge fit. Now, when it comes to security, I don't have any issues with the Houstons for stuff like running as well as road biking, but I wouldn't necessarily use these for mountain biking, where I think that rougher terrain could kind of like make them slip down a little bit, where they don't really have much grippy bits on the nose pads right here, where you do have grippy bits, at least on the Vanguards. And then for weight, the Vanguards are going to be just a little bit heavier than the Houstons. And then when it comes to smart features, so these are essentially going to be the same as the Meta Houstons, where you can take calls through your phone as well as calls through WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger. And then for Meta apps, you can also send text, photos, and have messages read out to you. And then you can also control music playback, as well as integration with Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, iHeart, as well as Audible. So all that stuff is really going to be about the same, like even asking Meta AI to identify what you're looking at. But I think what you're all probably here for are these sports features. And I guess let's first talk about the camera. So this has the same 12 megapixel camera resolution as the Houstons or the second gen Meta Ray-Bans, where it can record up to 3K vertical video. However, the big difference with these is that instead of the camera being off to the side like on the Houstons or the Ray-Bans, the camera is centered. And this is something I found out on the Houstons after using them for a bit, is that for some of the use cases I had, like taking POV shots when I was running or biking, actually I had to shift my head to the side to have a centered shot, or else the image would be offset. But with these, the camera is centered. And the other thing on the Houstons that wasn't necessarily quite as usable for me for sports was the 100-degree field of view. But with a wider field of view on these should be a lot more flexible. And then these also have slow motion capture modes, where you can record up to 60 frames per second in 1080p and then 30 frames per second in 1080p or 3K. And they're also introducing a new hyperlapse feature where it can take photos over a longer period of time and then stitch those together as a video. But the good news for all you Meta Houston and second gen Meta Ray-Ban owners is that they are going to be bringing these slow motion and hyperlapse modes in a software update that should be coming later in October, so stay tuned for that. And then when it comes to storage for all your photos and videos, this has the same 32 gigabytes of storage. Another change they made with these that make them more capable for sports is increased water resistance, where these have a much higher IP67 rating versus the IPX4 on the Houstons. Now, when it comes to battery life, so these are rated to get up to 9 hours of use versus the 8 hours on the Houstons, and then an additional 6 hours with the case, which has a built-in battery. Now, I think the battery life will kind of differ though, depending on what you're doing. So I think it's like up to 9 hours if you just have them on all the time, but if you are going to be playing music, so that's going to be around 6 hours or so. And then these also have a quick charge feature where they can charge up to 50% if you place them in the case for just 20 minutes. And these are also supposed to have even louder speakers than the Houstons, where they're saying that these should be about 6 decibels louder. But funny enough, I already found the Houston speakers to be quite good. That's actually one of the reasons I've been liking these so much, is that they're not just loud, but they also sound pretty decent for open ear design. And then in addition to the speakers, these are also supposed to have better microphones where they're able to handle wind noise better. And they say that they should be able to handle up to 30-mile-an-hour winds. So something I'll definitely try to test for you in my review. And then when it comes to the controls, so these are going to be different as well, where with the power, this is going to be a button on the Vanguards versus the toggle switch that's found in the Houstons. And then same thing goes for the capture button, where instead of the capture button being on the top of the temple like what's found in the Houstons, it's actually below the temple on the Vanguards. And this makes a lot of sense considering that these are intended to be used with helmets as well as glasses. But there's also an additional customizable action button right next to the capture button where you can decide to perform different functions like meta AI functions, switching capture modes, accessibility controls, or hearing real-time stats from your device. But these do still have the tap and swipe functions on the right-hand temple for music playback, where you can like play and pause as well as adjust the volume. Okay, so with all that, now let's talk about the Garmin integration. And first off, I have to say that the setup process for this was super slick. So during the initial setup, it'll ask you to connect your Garmin Connect account to the Meta AI app, and then it'll ask about permissions and stuff like that in terms of what data is going to be shared back and forth, including sharing activities as well as training data. And then from there, it's going to prompt you to install the Meta AI Connect IQ app on your compatible Garmin device. And here's a current list of compatible devices, at least for the moment, which are both watches as well as bike computers. And I'd probably guess that this list is going to expand in the future. And then from there, it's just going to install the Meta AI Connect IQ app onto your watch or your bike computer. Now, after that, this is the part that's kind of slick, where when you go to start a run, ride, or hike from your device, you'll hear an auto capture started message on your Vanguards.
Starting auto capture.
And then during your activity, what it'll do is automatically capture 5-second clips based on different criteria, like different mile splits or other key moments during your activity. You'll also be able to ask Meta to read out your stats, like your heart rate, your pace, and other metrics. But there's also an additional function where it can use the LED on the inside of the glasses to indicate heart rate or pace targets. So it can let you know if you go outside a range where the LED will change to red. But do note, for all this functionality, you will need to have your phone with you, because your watch talks to the Garmin Connect app on your phone, then Garmin Connect talks to the Meta AI app, and then the Meta AI app talks to your Vanguards. So there's no direct connection from your watch to the Vanguards themselves. And then with the Strava integration, so this is going to be similar to the Garmin setup process, where you'll first have to link your Strava account to the Meta AI app. And then after that, if you record your activity through the Strava app, as well as capture media during your activity, you can then create the same sort of workout recaps with your metrics like distance, pace, and heart rate, which you can then share back to Strava or your other socials. But do note that with the Strava integration, this is about integrating your stats after the fact. The auto capture feature and the real-time data, like asking Meta about your stats, is going to be more of a Garmin feature. So AI-powered glasses are getting pretty interesting now, and while I haven't necessarily been interested in these from the AI standpoint, I've been super intrigued by these from the sports standpoint. And while the Houstons have been okay, these Vanguards come with a lot of features that I've been personally looking for, which didn't come on the Houstons, and it mainly comes down to the wider field of view, the centered camera, as well as the increased water resistance, as well as the wraparound design. Now, none of these AI glasses are cheap by any means, where even with the Houstons, they'll start at $399, but like the versions that I actually got the transition lenses, which I think ran around $480. So I've definitely been thinking about how much I paid for my Houstons, which is a good chunk of change, but I did the math, and if we look at the components individually, so first off, we have the sunglass portion, which let's say that's going to be $150 to $200. Then we have the speakers portion of it, and again, I was kind of surprised at how good these sound. So let's say a minimum of like $100 or even $150 for a set of good open ear headphones. So at that point, we're like $250 $250 to $350 or so, depending on where you want to be on that range, leaving another $100 to $200 for the camera portion. And it's kind of hard to add in the cost for an equivalent camera in here, just because most action cameras do have higher resolution as well as more frame rates than what these offer, but they aren't nearly as convenient. But then of course are going to be the AI bits if you want to use those features. So when I did the breakdown for my Houstons, I guess my wallet wasn't hurt as much, I guess. Anyhow, I'll have a lot more thoughts on both of these in some upcoming videos, so definitely stay tuned for those. And again, if you want a sneak peek on some footage before my in-depth review, go ahead and head on over to my Instagram as well. But if you found the information in this video to be useful, do me a favor and just quickly hit that like button. But in the meantime, thanks so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.